All right, welcome to the podcast, everybody. I have Megan Nolan with me here from Vitality Wellness, and we are going to be talking about the negative chatter in your mind and how that fits in with business. So I'm going to hand over to Megan, and please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your business, and we'll go from there. Welcome.
Okay, thank you. Hello, everybody. Great to be here. Thank you so much for having me. So, yes, I'm so excited because we all have a negative committee in our head. And I think it's high time actually, that we recognize that it might actually be hijacking your superpowers. And that's actually what happened to me. And so I have changed forms a few times, like many of us have as entrepreneurs, but I have recognized that my passion is truly in supporting other sensitive entrepreneurs to take control of anxiety, take control of your health, take control of your life by becoming an intentional thinker, learning how to come back to a place of connected awareness, learning the powerful tool of thinking on purpose. And I learned all of this. I've learned this over a few times, I'm sure. Many of us can relate to getting to that place in our life and our business of giving till we have no more to give, and we feel like the bottom is cracked and everything's just pouring out it, and we feel like we're spinning in circles and not really getting anywhere, and our what I now call the worn out entrepreneur, just depleted, frantic, frazzled, running on caffeine and cortisol. And I got to that point many years ago, and I recognized it, and I started the journey of supporting other business owners with yoga and mental fitness and exercise. And admittedly, I got there or pretty close to it again in August after I launched my book and I launched a new program. And then I live here on Maui, and so very likely you heard about the tragedies that happened, and it really led to pressing pause and taking stock and taking a really, in the past, I would have said a good hard look at it. And I didn't take a hard look at it. I took a gentle, compassionate look at it, which is, really a lot of what we teach in so many spiritual traditions and wisdom practices and cultures really come back to that as a core important quality and characteristic to practice, is learning to be compassionate with ourselves. So I took a gentle look at what was working, what wasn't working, what I wanted to do, what I felt aligned to doing. And so it was an opportunity, and that's a lot, again, is learning to take that perspective on things, because nobody told me, and I'm sure they probably didn't tell you either, but entrepreneurship is like the fast track to human development and self-awareness and all of that, if you let it, right?
Yeah.
And so took that opportunity as it was, as an opportunity, and so as tragic and devastating as it was, of course, and learning to navigate the emotions of it and be in support of myself as I healed, and I'm still healing from it. But really recognizing that the tools of yoga are so powerful in so many different ways. And yet so many of us are running on the stress express all the time, right? Like, and you feel like, if you lose that one little tether that you have, you might fly off into space this time, and so really taking stock of that and recognizing that this is something that I love to support other people with, because it's powerful. And not only are there the beautiful, long-lasting spiritual components, which we know is essential because everything is energy, but I love science, and I love when they line up with each other, and I love when they, not that I need spirituality to be backed up, but when there's all of this other like logistical and analytical proof for other people that have, different sorts of brains with that, then we can bring it all together, because they really are super complementary. And so that's me.
Yeah. So how long were you like running your business when you got to this point? How long it had been going?
I've been doing what I do for 17 years in different
Oh, wow.
forms, but really specifically in this niche of supporting other entrepreneurs for 5 years.
Wow. Okay. So what would you say was the shift that you made from the last 5 years just recently? What happened?
Well, everything I just said about with Maui, like of having that big shift of wanting to have the opportunity to change that up, because supporting other entrepreneurs has always been something I'm passionate about. But initially I was really supporting from the perspective of a solid morning routine and having an empowering morning routine to start the day with. But what I've recognized is that we really, to have lasting change, in order to expand, in order to attract more and be able to keep it, it really does take deep work at the level of the nervous system and also of the mind. And so I've been working those tools for a while, but now shifting gears to really support those of us in the entrepreneur community that are challenged by anxiety, which is a lot. That really has been a change in the last few months.
Huh. So what would you say with your clients then? What would you say is do you see like a pattern with them? That there's, I mean, obviously anxiety, but there's something like, anxiety comes from somewhere. Have you seen any patterns when you're working with people? Because entrepreneurs tend to be a certain kind of person, I would say, right? That we're certain kind of people are drawn to do this because it's not easy. Is there, a certain kind of mindset that goes with that or anything that you've noticed?
Yes, yes. A lot of entrepreneurs are, and they would even call themselves this: high achievers, driven, high performance. And these
Mm,
are all things that we see, they've been branded as really great things, and they are, because we need that drive and that motivation. But if it's untethered and it's not regulated, that can be the end of us,
mhm,
because it can really just drive us to that point of more, more, more. You get the best-selling book like I did. My book was a bestseller, and then I'm like, okay, I need a new program now. What should I do now? I literally, like, so quick to just like barely celebrating anything and then going to the next step.
right.
So there's really, with entrepreneurs, typically there's that the high achieving is very common, and attention to detail, perfectionism,
Oh yeah. Yeah. So many
controlling,
are
wanting
like,
to make sure everything is done your way, this way, tend to be the bottleneck in our business because we have a hard time delegating. So those are really the top three. And what they are coping mechanisms that we learned as children. Nobody taught us, really, unless you went to entrepreneur school, which some people have at this point. But nobody really taught us how to be an entrepreneur. We were taught how to be a good student, to be a good boy, girl person, to be a good employee, but we weren't taught to, take breaks, because we're the boss. Like, if we don't have a boss telling us to clock out and punch out, we don't, right? Our brain's just like spinning all
mm,
the time. Those are really the top three that tend to show up because they're modeled for us as children, and then we carry them into our life as adults and now business owners.
hmm. Yeah, it's funny you should pinpoint that with my clients quite a lot. That's one of their big sticking points, like, oh, it's not on brand, or it's the wrong colors, or it's this and it's that. But it's like you have to test different things. And I find that can be, for me, is like a lot of education and trying to support them around that. It's like it doesn't really matter as long as it works, but trying to get someone out of that mindset of it has to be perfect. It's like, no, an ad has to work. It doesn't have to be perfect, doesn't have to be on brand, it has to bring people to your business. And then your landing
Mm-hmm.
page or well, the website, that's something else, but your landing page has to convert people to your offer, right? So
Mm-hmm.
how would you support someone around that mindset of perfectionism? What advice would you have for them around that to relax a little bit? And efficiency, something working is more important than it being perfect.
Yes, that's a great question. And it's one of those things where it's like, we're not going to know until we try. And that your feedback is in your data, especially for you with Facebook ads, of the amount of opt-ins and click-throughs and all of that. And so it's challenging because we're never going to know until we put it out and we test it. Because if we're sitting back and we're like fussing with the font and changing the color like 3 different shades, and all of that, then nobody's going to see it and nobody's going to be able to give you the feedback on it. And the thing is that when we have that like nitpicky attention to detail, it can really limit how people are responding to it, because it's just so like tight, and there's such a tight energy to that when we are like hyper focused on these little details. And I know that's challenging because, of course, this personal brand, it's like, this is a reflection of me and this is my program and I'm putting myself out into the world and I want it to be just so, which I totally get and I completely relate to. But the thing is that we're never going to know until we try, and we could spend months, years, in fact, creating a program, putting it out there. We do a launch and nobody buys it because like the messaging is crap. And, it doesn't matter how pretty the font is if you're not even
Right,
like anywhere
exactly.
close to having somebody respond to it and have them land and, or click through from the ad or whatever, then all that year of nitpicking.
Yeah. Yeah, I find that a lot. I've actually like done a couple of experiments and a landing page. Gosh, somebody else built it and it looked beautiful. But I just looked at it and was like, oh, this isn't ads because ads are kind of rough, like that whole sphere. It's like it doesn't always look the best to be the functional version. So I came along, made it functional. We went from a 30% conversion to 56 within a week. It was incredible. Just from the pretty version to the functional version. And then other examples, like she wanted to tweak the wording on it. And she gave me permission to talk about this, and I've recorded some info on it, but she wanted to tweak the wording. And I said, I've trained them from the beginning, like the details really matter, and we test them, tiny little details. She changed the heading and the beginning of a paragraph, and it tanked from 56 conversion to 2. So I was like, the details are really important, but it's got to be the right details. So how would you advise like to people like that, that are so rigid in their thinking? Like what tools would you give them to overcome being so rigid?
For sure. And that's really the tool set of mental fitness is, so say you are a perfectionist and we start to catch ourselves in that, like fine tuning everything. And what we want to look for is our emotional state. And this is the other thing with entrepreneurs, as visionaries and creatives, we tend to live like from about here up. And if you can't see me, it's from the neck up. We tend to be so in our heads that we forget that we have our body that is communicating with us constantly, communicating through emotions and inner states. Yet we're so up here that we're not tuned into that until we do, spiritual practices and have different disciplines or begin that journey of reconnecting to our body. And so what's really important is that they have practices to be able to just notice in those moments when you're like, oh, but it's not working. Oh, this is so hard. And you can feel that in your body, right? And just noticing like, oh, this feels like crap, and I'm like, this is so hard. Why? And you can feel that constriction and the resistance. Bam, right there.
Mm.
To stop.
So
because what's happening is when we're in that state, because these are hardwired states that are created when we're children, they're wired into our brain and they're wired into the stress part of our brain called the amygdala, and we're under stress. And so whenever you feel like you hear yourself saying, I'm stressed, then do the same thing I'm going to tell you in a minute. But if you're in the like more sort of mode, then we're going to do this, because when we're in stress, which is, thank you, like let's all give a second to that beautiful brain of yours. Your brain is wired to keep you alive and keep you surviving. It's not really wired for most things that we need to do as entrepreneurs, just not, until we start to do this rewiring work. And so what happens, the amygdala is online and it's like fight, flight, freeze, fawn, all the things that tend to happen when we're under stress, right? And we go back to that pattern of perfectionism because we were modeled that maybe a little as child, or we developed it on our own. And so we're in that pattern. And when that part of our brain is online, your brain is so efficient. It's like, whoa, we are surviving right now. There's some sort of tiger. There is a threat. Everyone watch out, and it's like in that mode. It's not in, what's the best possible idea? I have a grand vision for this. It's not in a creative mode because your prefrontal cortex is not online, because your brain isn't like, let's create a masterpiece. It's like, let's get the hell out of here. Something's wrong, and so that's what's happening. And so, we could spend hours talking about the impact of stress on our health and our long-term sustainability as business owners. It's not a thing. It's not a good thing. And so when you notice that, oh, this is so hard. Why can't it just work? Why is she telling me to not change the copy on the ads again? And like getting all pissed off. And then when we notice that constriction, that emotional state, that's when we pause. And that's one of the tools that I share and that I do weekly is a power pause. And I help my clients to integrate these throughout the day so that we don't get up to the 10. We're not in the red zone of freaking out. So when you notice that emotional state, or you even hear yourself saying like, I'm about to lose it, man, or like whatever, then we pause and we bring our attention into our body. And that's where we can use some of the beautiful tools of the yoga practice. breathing, right? We tend to get really very singularly focused, right, on that one particular font or detail. We need to widen our eyes. What we do when we widen our perspective, like, is if you look forward right now, obviously if you're driving, don't do this, but if you look forward and you look forward at whatever's right in front of you, and then you widen your visual scope so you can see the side rooms, what you're doing there is you're giving your brain a break, you're tonifying your vagus nerve, you're shifting yourself into a calm state, but you're also physically widening your perspective. You're taking a different perspective. You're taking a different view.
Oh,
It's
I love
super simple. And like our eyes get tired from looking at these freaking things all day long, computers, phones, etc. And
yeah.
so doing something that simple, and this is where a lot of like high achieving entrepreneurs get a little tripped up because they're like, yeah, that seems a little bit simple. Like, is this really going to do anything? The magic in it is its simplicity. Because
Yes.
if you step back and you breathe, right, which is literally the life force of all life and so like revered in so many different cultures and practices. So if you just go to the breath and you breathe into your belly and you're literally shifting the brain activity, you're regulating your nervous system. But when it comes to that being productive, end result sort of answer to your question, when we do all of what I just said and we come to a more present, connected place, we have taken that wider view. We can begin to get into more of a flow state, right? We can't access a flow state if we're in a stress state. So then we can step back and we get a perspective shift. We get an internal shift. We become more expanded, which is what spirituality is all about, right? Is a sense of expansion versus that contracted, this is so hard, I don't want to do this sort of energy. It's a much more of an openness and a knowing and a trust. And then as soon as that sage, wise part of your brain is online, it's like, that's when all the ideas start to come in, right? And I don't need to change the font. It looks great. Let's just try, And so we shift out of that hardwired state into a more expansive state of possibility and purpose and focus and clarity.
Yeah, beautiful. That was such a good tool. I've heard that one before, but I mean, I sit outside a lot for that reason, to have a bigger expanse. I probably didn't do it like on purpose, but I'll think about that a little bit more. I like that one. And this is my like Zen place where I come to listen to the birds and kind of get creative. So I went through that myself in just recently, like I was saying to you before we started. So I had my business, it was chugging along. It was like everything was set up. We knew it worked. It was a very masculine, very aggressive, very sales kind of driven model, which is how everybody runs these agencies. And then I started to do similar work into yoga, like coming out my head. I was the perfectionist, all those things. Really angry with myself for not doing more, not growing faster, all those things. And as I started to expand and come into all the things you were saying, sitting back a little bit and figuring out how not to put all that pressure on myself, I started to see the business in a completely different way. And here I am in a total pivot. But one thing I've noticed is things starts to shed from your old life. Like for me, it was my drive, and it was that real aggressive kind of dedication, that not like hard work when you work 12 hours a day and and I kind of missed that a little bit. So like, how do you integrate that into your chill, yoga loving, expansive? I'm finding that really difficult to bring part of that into who I am now. And the creative is amazing, but it's then having that little edge of all that, push and drive that kind of disappeared into then I mean, it's in action, but it's a slower. Am I just being hard on myself, or do you find that that's a transition you have to help me?
That's your high achieving self being like, why can't I still do it and be calm?
Right.
Because you're actually tend to be more productive when you're in that open and expansive state, because we're stay in that place of focus and clarity. But the thing is to answer your question is that there's always going to be times when we walk and when we run, right? And especially in business, especially when it comes to, launch dates and promos and workshops or client work, there's going to be times when you need to sprint. But it's really important that when we sprint, because it's activating the stress response, and it's using that beautiful skill that you have to be driven and focused, that it comes from that place of center, and that you keep coming back to that, because it's really easy. Because once that we start to go over there, then your brain's like, oh good, they're back, let's do it again,
right.
work harder, keep going, don't stop, don't stop. And it's like that they just kind of rein you back in at any chance. They're very insidious, the shitty committee, I call them, because they talk a lot of smack, they don't make you feel good, and they don't do very much other than push you.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they do. They push you, or they make you feel bad, or they cause a negative emotion, or they cause us to stress out even more. And so it is a really fine line. And it's almost one of those things where you say, that's a great question, because that is the case for a lot of us, but it really needs to be kind of a check and balance sort of thing. It's that you get to be the one that is like, you keep an eye on it, because if you're going to bring back in that drive quality, then we want to make sure that we do something at the end to kind of reset and come back into a place of groundedness and focus and clarity. Because it's really easy for us to, at least speaking for myself, to default back into that old mode, because it's wired into your brain. But when we start to change and create these new patterns for yourself, and you see how, I can be as productive and get so much done and have it feel good, it doesn't have to feel tight and pushing and hard like it did before to be good, to be effective, right? Because our brain wants to kind of scale down how great things are now that we're doing different things. So when we start to create these new pathways, these new patterns and beliefs for ourselves, it takes time in the brain, because what's happening is you are literally creating a new pathway inside your brain. And as you do that, the old one starts to kind of wilt and die off. And it takes time. That's why it takes time to create new habits and new identities. So it's a practice. It's not a one and done by any means. It's an ongoing thing for sure.
It's funny you should mention that, because I really noticed, like, going from the workforce where I was doing the 60-hour weeks, running like a Southern California 2 branches off down here, and then I was like, what hours do I work? These questions that nobody tells you about running your own business. So I was like,
Right.
just work 9 to 5. And then I was like, I don't have to work. Why am I working after a month of that? I was like, why did you leave the 9 to 5 to work 9 to 5? And
Right.
it was like these little checks that came along. It's like, this is your business. You do it whenever you want. And now I actually find like 8 to 1 a.m. is where my creative zen is, because everybody's quiet. There's nothing going on. There's no distractions. It's dark, and I'm focused. And I was like, wow, so that's my natural time to just be creative, put ads together, write stuff. And I really enjoy it more there. But so there's like shifts like that they don't tell you about business too, that you're like, and it comes, not all at once. It's like one by one.
Yes, it is. It's really creating, the systems and balances and for the strategies in our business, but in for ourselves as well. And it's, nobody tells you when to clock in and take a break, and that's on us. And that can be really challenging to take a step back and take a step away when we have these different patterns and programs in place. But I love that you did that, because it is so important that we build the business to serve you, and that it's by your design, not by default, right?
Mhm.
And that's where coming back to a place of intentionality with the way you start your day, the way you move throughout your day, and even for, when we set up our work times, that's really key.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Nobody tells you a lot about this business stuff. Like, how your head is when you take on a business is 80% of how the business is going to go. I speak to people, like when I was doing sales calls, like 90% of the people I would speak to, I could just hear it in them. They had money mindset issues. They had self-confidence issues. None of that, like, their stuff itself was great. What they'd set up, their program, I was like, yeah, this is going to sell, but you're in your own way most of the time. Business
Right.
owners are the things that are stopping the businesses from launching and going with whatever it is that's going in their head.
Exactly. And what's going on in our head is what we've been talking to this whole time, is these little characters that were created as adaptive behaviors in the beginning, because it's all about survival, right? So we could stay in our family, our tribe of origin, and we did that by appeasing the people that were taking care of us, right? And we learn these different skills at the time, and then we practice them so much that they actually become what we think are our personality traits. Oh, I'm a hard worker. I'm a
Mm-hmm.
perfectionist. I'm stressed, but they're not. That's not who you are, because underneath all of that, that's not who you are. Because if you can observe it and witness it, you're in the witnessing presence, which is who you are. And who you are is the wholeness of life and the universe or God or whatever word you like to put there. And so when we can start to recognize these saboteurs or the because they're losing their potency and their power if they're not used from that place of connection to your wholeness and life and the universe and your higher power, whatever that is, right? It's really important. And people, people talk about mindset all the time. Oh, I just had a shit mindset, you have poor money mindset. And it's like, okay, well, what are you going to do? You're going to go write some affirmations and you're going to go write it on the mirror. And I love all that stuff for sure. But until we make shifts at the level of the nervous system, there won't be lasting change because you will only allow in what you believe is safe. And remember, that's what your brain and your nervous system are all about. And until we start to make these shifts and really do it at the level of the body, not up here, mindset's great, but you have to integrate the nervous system because that's where your subconscious mind lives. That's where your beliefs, your identities, your stories, all of that live in your body. That's why having movement practices are so important, right? Yoga, Tai Chi, like tapping, breath work, all of that stuff, because then we're getting into your soma, your body, the connection between mind and body, right? And so that's where we can start to really feel and see these powerful shifts. And that's where science and spirituality really meet up. But it's also, the inner work and the outer work, if you want to look at it that way, or the masculine and the feminine, like it's what we see a lot on social media and all the memes and stuff. But it's like, this is, it comes down to as the brass taps of it all.
Yeah. I feel like that was a window for me, masculine based business, because I know the people that built the style of how it was all set up, because I basically just bought it, because I knew it worked. So it was very masculine built, and then it's definitely transitioning more into the feminine with this, I want to talk to people and I want to support them and I want to help them in the best way possible. And then some of them will end up my clients and some of them hopefully will just get something really good and move on. But that wasn't the ethos of how it was before. It was like, got to make money, got to charge them this much. And that's never been me. It's like, I always give them way more than I should do. Always like, I just want it to work was how, I was feeling it through when I have my clients. Like, I want you to be successful. If that means me doing something that I know is going to be helpful, I'm not going to go and charge you money for it. I'm just going to make it happen, I don't know. Do you do the any know thing about living design? I'm like I'm the worker in the background. I'm building stuff. I'm like,
yeah, that makes sense. Totally makes sense as an ads manager.
Just back here building it, just want it to work. Leave me alone. Just go away and do your thing. You go do you and be wonderful up front, which is funny because I've always been in front facing roles where, I was like, yeah, look at me. I was a salesperson for a long time and I did really good at it, but transferring it online didn't work out for me. That's like, no, now I'm behind the scenes and the whole business is transferring into no calls, nothing like that. I am going to be present with you on videos and stuff like this. And it'll feed from there rather than me trying to get people in a more masculine sense, bring them in and close them. It's like, no, we want to work in there. You don't. Bye or hello. Big transition.
Yeah. It's a totally different energy. It's more of a, I believe they call it attraction-based marketing. But if we, speak to what we've been speaking here, the difference is that like push, do. And it's a leaning back and it's an attractive force because when we're in that place of connection to self, then we are strengthening that inner presence, which then affects your electromagnetic field, which is your energy, your aura, your essence. That is what is being sent out into the world that people pick up on and they're drawn to it, right? Rather than like going out and grabbing it, it's bringing them to you. So it literally is that attractive approach to it because you're in your own power, you're in your own worth, you're in your own value, right? It's not the I have to make this work sort of vibe. That's totally different, right? And so that's like what the ancients have been teaching us for so long about your energy, your essence, your body language, your vibe, right? We know that body language is so communicative and we share much more through our energy, which is our nervous system. but we are speaking so much from that point of view that that's what we're sending out into the world. And again, this isn't like a fluffy concept. This is actually measurable, and this is something, again, that's where the science comes in. So it's really just kind of interesting to look at, like, oh, these wisdom traditions, they knew a few things, didn't they?
Yeah.
They really got it. They got it like on the deepest level, like, modern science, brain science, anatomy, like everybody that starts to really dive into what makes us tick as humans, and how we operate. When you look back and you refer back to systems like yoga and Ayurveda and Chinese medicine that basically had it mapped out thousands of years ago. And
Like,
they're
nourish
like,
your body, stretch and move your energy, and you're gonna be all good. Keep your mind clean. It's like the three pillars of just being like a happy human being. But we lost it in our society there for a while. I'm glad it's coming back though.
Me
I'm very
too.
glad there's people like you out there. I love how you said attraction marketing. So I was actually reading about that, and part of like new philosophies, try different stuff. Ads work, you can make those work. Now go figure out the other things, because I do support clients in other stuff like social media. And I'm like, okay, so now I have to just go and figure out that. And I was like, attraction marketing, that sounds, I'll park that and I'll read it later. And it turns out that's what I'm doing naturally. So I love that you said that. Thanks. I learned something today.
You're
Yeah.
welcome.
Yeah, sometimes these things just feed naturally when you start clear, like when you do all that work, when you clear everything out, it just a natural flow of life happens after that.
Well, that's what it means to be in flow, right? It's like people talk about that all the time, about having it be ease and flow. And it's like, okay, well, that's all well and good. But if we're up here and like, then we're not in connection to that. And I mean, we always are to a degree, but we're kind of, Esther Hicks calls it pinching ourselves off. We're kind of pinching ourselves off from source when we do that sort of thing. Where when we, because that's a contracted, tight, perfectionist sort of energy, right? And then when we allow ourselves to be open and be spacious, widen the perspective, use those tools, then it allows all of that to kind of, because it was already there. It's just your brain wasn't focused on it, because your brain was like, survive, survive, something is wrong, threat, 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 and so that's where the interesting thing is that, all of this is available to us, and we hear that a lot too, but it's just a matter of kind of cleaning the lens. It's kind of like when I have a really funny habit of constantly touching the lens of my cameras. My partner loves it. And I've learned it from him that I did that, because he's like, do you know sometimes when you do your videos, it's super fuzzy? And I was like,
Yeah.
hey, but he's like, you just gotta wipe the damn thing. Why do you touch it? And like, touch. I have fancy sunnies now, so I try to not touch them. But like, I have a habit of touching things, and so I'd have fingerprints all over it. And it's like glasses, right? If we're wearing glasses, or if you go, for example, if you're skiing or wearing some sort of protective goggles, and they're colored, and you wear them all day, and at first you're like, wow, everything's orange, this is fun, and then you wear it all day and you don't even see it anymore, right? And then you take them off and you're like, oh, look at all these colors. It's what happens when we make these inner shifts, is that it changes the way we see things. And maybe have heard the quote from Dr. Wayne Dyer, who said, when we change the way we look at things, the things we look at change, because we've changed.
Yeah.
We see things differently because we're different. And that's the work, that's the journey, right? That's the name of my book, The Warrior's Journey. It's a journey of evolution, it's a journey of becoming, and it's a journey of entrepreneurship, but it's really the whole practice.
Yeah, gosh, I noticed that not just in business, like people, when I got more into the spirituality and started really digging in with that. And I found out I have friends from years ago that were all into this, never said anything. And it's like what you were saying, you have this vision and you can only see a certain thing until you clean the goggles or take them off. And then all of a sudden you see all these other things, and they were always around me. And it's like same in business, you have your goggles in one way and you're looking at one thing, but there's a much bigger picture available to you at any given time. You need to do the inner work to make a business work. You need to be able to like look around and really experience everything that's out there to offer, and not be so rigid in one thing. I love that. I love that.
Absolutely.
Well,
And I mean, we can talk about it till the cows come home, but it's a matter of practice, right?
yeah.
And it's like, it sounds so easy, But
Right,
it's,
but he's doing it.
it's like, hey, that's great. Let me just polish the lenses and off I go. But it really is, it's a moment to moment connected awareness of coming back, checking in with your body, learning to read its signals, learning about yourself, right? Because that's what entrepreneurship is, a medium to learn about ourselves, learning all about our triggers and our wounds and our where we get tripped up and our patterns and our things. And that's really what yoga is, right? It's just learning to witness ourselves in any given moment. And so when we have that medium and it's throwing all this stuff up in our face, it really is just consciously over and over, and that's why having little breaks throughout the day and scheduling them in and literally scheduling them, not saying, I'll do that later. Yeah, I'll just get to that later, because we don't, like, it's unless it's in the calendar, most people won't do it.
Mhm.
So really just kind of being intentional with topping up the tank, if you will, like regulating your nervous system, whatever you want to call it, putting on your mask, filling up the cup, like all of the analogies, they all are speaking to the same thing of inflow so that there can be output. That's really
Mm.
like, from the business perspective, it's you are your own most valuable commodity, your energy, your focus. And so shouldn't that be a top priority, because it's essential for all other activities of your business, because it's essential for the longevity of your business, the impact of your business, the revenue of your business, the customer support levels, the integrity, all of it. One common denominator, us. And so that's where these tools are super powerful, and it's work that really it behooves you to do, because it really does lend to you being able to make the impact that you want, being able to attract in the abundance and the amazing opportunities and have the best-selling book and be on the stage and all the things. It really it is, all of these things are interconnected. And when we make it a priority to take care of ourselves and live in the energy of our vision and think the thoughts that are aligned and, align and all of those things that we hear so much about, that's really why, right? It's why, because it allows us to live as fully as possible and who we are, and show up from that vibrancy, and not show up from the like tight and constricted and this sucks and it's never going to work and what am I doing, and like all of that that can happen in our head very easily if we're not keeping an eye on it, because the mind has that one job: keep us alive, and everything else is a threat.
Yeah, like literally. When I learned that, I was like, wow, you're right. But we use it for so much. So we're always just like led by this thing that was meant to have one job, but we let it do all the jobs. And it's
Exactly.
taken over our whole life, and it, it's detrimental. It's like, no, am I going to die here? No, then shut up. I'm busy. I've got other things to do.
Right.
I need to feel from a different place, especially as women. Like we can really like dig into that a lot easier than men can. When they're more logic, so they use this a little bit more than us. But for us, it's like when I learned to feel my way, like the world changed quite a bit for me. I'm so much more relaxed, just so much a happier person. And I feel like I have better direction. I'm just, that little bzzz in my head is like, you're not doing enough. It's the only thing that's still bugging me. But other than that, I'm like, I like where my business is going, I like where my life is going. I'm so much more relaxed. I lost 20 pounds. All these weird things that happen
Yes.
when you
Yeah.
take your stress away and your cortisol starts going down, and my skin's better and I'm looking younger, and all these things that then flow with that. It's so
Well
important.
connected.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, mind body connection, huge. Gosh, huge. I'm so glad we had our chat first. So you're like my first podcast guest. And it was like, I was thinking, like, I really want to talk about the spiritual, because there's such a huge thing before business that stops people from being successful at business. Like all the businesses I've spoken to, I don't know any one of them. I have hundreds of calls I did, and I looked at it and went, oh God, this isn't going to sell. Not a single one. Everybody had a great idea, but I'd say most of them won't be successful because of this, because I can't afford it. I can't do this, or I can't do that, or that's too much, or it's too much risk. It's like, well, baby, business is a risk. So either you're, confident enough to take that risk, or you've spent a lot of money on something and you're not going to get anywhere. So there's a lot of like that part. So I'm really glad we addressed that up front. And as a business owner, yeah, that was 100%. Any problems I've ever had were 100% something that was going on in my head. It was nothing to do with my sales process or my script or the funnel or the ads or anything.
Mhm.
100%. Just whatever was in here. It's like, okay, something needs to change. I need to pivot or I need to do something. But a lot of people get stuck there and they won't think outside that box and be like, okay, so what is it that needs to change in me to then direct to the next step from here?
Mhm. Absolutely.
Mm. Well, this has been an awesome conversation. Thank you so much, Megan. Please tell the viewers where you want them to go, what you want them to do, about your book. Give us some info and your website addresses and all that kind of good stuff so they can go find you.
For sure. Well, I have a gift for you. So come over to Gift from Megan, and I have a little energy fix blueprint over there that you can use anytime that you need to reset your energy. So it's a nice way to press pause and come back into your body, move your body to come back into balance. And so that you get a boost of natural energy and clarity. So that is Gift from Megan. So you can head over there and grab that. And on Instagram, I spend a lot of time, me and my dog, and fun stuff and little tips and tools that you can integrate into your busy day to really reclaim your superpowers and truly live vibrantly and holistically healthily. And so I'm over on Instagram at I am Megan Nolan.
Awesome. And we will put the links below as well, depending on what platform you're in, so you can click and go there. Well, thank you, Megan. It's been an awesome conversation. I appreciate your time today.
You're so welcome. Thank you for having me. It's been super fun.